you guys collaborated full-fledged with Jay-Z. Holy moly guacamole. How the hell, but by the way, he has to be, one thing about Jay that I know him his whole career, he has to be into it to be into it.
Yeah.
He will not do something for money. It's not like, that's not him. What happened when y'all got together? What was it? He had to be a fan of you guys.
Yeah, well, okay, so this was after our second record. So first record came out, Hybrid Theory was by the end of the cycle, they told us it was the biggest record on the planet. And I was like, oh, it didn't register what that meant. Like, I was just thinking big is big. Like, but like Britney Spears and whatever, like those kinds of groups, pop groups were big. They were probably bigger. And that our label and our manager was like, no, your record was bigger than those records. Wow. And so it happened so fast that we didn't wrap our heads around it. And then so we were already going straight into the second record. Did a second record that did also really, really well. And then so that's where we were sitting in our career. And then Jay was just getting to the point where he was probably a few years from that moment where he retired.
What was it, Unplugged or something like that?
So what they did is the mashup was like a hot thing at the moment. Danger Mouse had done the Grey album, and MTV realized that a lot of DJs were doing mashups, and so they went to Jay and they said, hey, we want to do a show that's like a mashup show. Would you kick off the first episode, since you were the first mashup that somebody did really that blew up? And they said, who do you want to do it with? He said yes. And then they said, who do you want to do it with? And he came back to them and said, Linkin Park.
That's crazy. That's dope.
Yo,
and they told us. So then his manager was John Manili, and
I just seen John Manili with Jelly Roll. Yesterday.
So John went to our manager and he said, this is what they're thinking and whatever. Do you want to do it? And the response, instead of giving them a response, knowing that it would just lead to like questions, I just made 3 mashups because that's what I do. So what they didn't know is that's how I learned how to make music. That's how I learned to make tracks. I didn't grow up like making a track and rapping on it. I grew up before that taking stuff that I liked and mashing them up in order to learn how to make a beat. So I'd like mash up, it'd be like a break beat, an old break beat off of like a soul record, and then like Wu-Tang Clan vocals, and then like Rage Against the Machine and Smashing Pumpkins, and then maybe some Jackson 5 thing. Like all these fucked up things that didn't make any sense. But to me, I was just vibing.
Like your own remixes.
I was just like learning. And so that's how I learned to make
track.
I was doing it on this weird little sampler originally called a MS1. It was a Roland piece of shit. And then eventually a Kai S900. And then, so yeah, I made those, and that's how I learned how to do it. And so when they send us the message that said Jay wants to do mashups, I just made 3 mashups just as like a proof of concept or whatever. I sent it to them, and Jay's response was, oh shit. And he knew immediately, like, yeah, we've got to do, this is the right thing to do.
The whole EP.
Yeah, there wasn't any conversation then. I was just like, what are they going to do? The first thing they're going to say is like, well, how should we go about? We don't need to do, how should we do this? Just the music is either it works or it doesn't work.
No, but since Walk This Way, right?
Yes.
Run DMC, Walk This Way. The rock and hip hop thing, it was so perfect.
And Beastie Boys, can't forget Beastie Boys doing it as well.
I actually think it went back further. To me, things like Led Zeppelin, on their own. Like, I think if they had the power to sample, or they knew to collaborate with people, that they would have done it. But they were just assimilating like soul and R&B and older rock.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Right? And
rock definitely.
They were putting that into this rock thing that they did as a British rock group, right? So to me, I listened to that and I heard hip hop because I didn't know any better. I was just like 13, 14.
No, but for me, I'm listening to the EP and I'm like, this doesn't sound forced at all. It sounded like, I'm going out on a limb here. Did you guys record in the same studio?
As Jay?
Yeah.
Originally, not the original material, but he had so much music out before us, right? Like we grew up listening to, like, what records, do you remember sometimes we would talk about Jay's records? Like when you're just talking, you're making songs and you go, oh, you know what's dope is the bounce on like Can I Get a What? You're like, that balance is so cool. Like, I wish we had a song that had that kind of groove.
Right.
You know, and so you'd just be thinking about that, and that would kind of influence the drums. And then we pull from other things, like other ideas we had. But I think that sets up, when we did the mashups, it was like, oh, it's already, the hip hop element's already in there. Like,
if you go to the origins of it, it's like, a lot of times it just goes back to these break beats that, you know, they're just part of the foundation of everything we're listening to now.
Is that something, because I kid you not, to me, when I listen to you guys' music, I can hear the hip hop bass in there. I can hear it, but then I also understand that it's a whole other crowd. You know what I mean? But like I said, like I'm sitting there, like I don't want to be an artist no more, but I can't help myself. And the whole time I'm sitting there and I'm like I'm rhyming to your shit. So is that something y'all did consciously, like? Because anybody who loves hip hop has to love your music.
I feel like sometimes may have been intentional, but other times it's just like it's baked into like what we like. It's just what we like. Like that's what I grew up on. So, I mean, we were talking earlier, like it's like before we got into making rock music, I probably listened to like 2 to 5% of the music I listened to was probably rock.
Okay.
It's probably like 90% hip hop.
Because you guys are like the hip hop heads of the band. It seems like it.
I think that's right.
So do you think that you guys bring more of that perspective, and is ever like anybody else saying, nah, it's leaning too much to hip hop? Or
well, I think if you're alive today, it's like hip hop's just undeniable.
Right.
It's everywhere, right? And I think for us, it's just a matter of over time doing a lot of work and focusing on, you know, in our case, especially in the early days, hip hop. And then it's just like, oftentimes more than not, you hit a wall, right?
Right.
Like, I want to do this thing.
Right.
I can't get it. And actually, there were some old tapes I was watching of us making this record. We're talking about some vocal stuff that Mike's doing. And he's like, like, I felt like I just like kind of hit a ceiling on what I can do at this moment. But then like magically we just make the right track a half year later and it's just automatically it just flows.
Yeah, did you ever have a verse where like you did the verse on a beat and it sounded okay, but then you didn't release it or whatever, and then later you heard a different beat and you did the same verse on the new beat and you're like, that's the song?
like it fit perfectly, like a
Yeah.
That happens. Like I have, you know, at this point in my career, I got so many verses that are like almost, they're like, maybe they're half baked. They're like not quite done, but they're close and they have a vibe. And then I put them over the right track and it fits.
So let's talk sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Okay. I love that that's where you went. You were probably talking to the wrong group, but all right. So it's like you have Mr. Rogers on your show. Let's talk porn.
Yeah.
Because Exhibit A.
Yes, because rock and roll has a lot of sex. I got off of cocaine yesterday. It was crazy.
And you're blaming it on rock and roll?
Yeah, I'm blaming it on rock and roll. Yes, I am.
That's funny. That's funny.
How is that? How is that such thing that exists? Sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Absolutely.
I think that's the music industry in general.
I have my own answer, but what would you say?
You look like you did a line before.
Actually, nah, that I haven't. But no.
Okay, good.
We're in Miami now, right?
No one
So,
believes
like-
me, but me neither.
Joe's in Miami now.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I know you don't want to answer it.
Okay.
I feel like it's funny because it was really notable when we came out.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things people said about us all the time was, oh, these guys are so much less that.
Wow.
Like
More clean cut?
The groups that were out before us were really partying through the 80s. And
The Motley Crues and the Guns N'
So in the
Roses.
80s, huge. Like that's what they were all known for.
They were biting bats and shit like that.
It was
that
crazy.
Ozzy Osbourne?
But they were
Ozzy Osbourne.
they were out on Sunset. I don't know if you ever spent much time in like Hollywood.
Yeah, I've never really got it.
So those guys, they lived. The stories
It was
go
like
that they
debauchery
lived
on
there, and they were just constantly like back and forth between the club where they played and take girls back to the place where they stayed, and they lived. It was all day.
It was a culture at that point, right?
So so that was their culture. And when I grew up, I was a little when that was ending.
Okay.
So I was reacting to I was looking at. You were talking about Run DMC, Beastie Boys. Like that was the first records I ever bought were those records.
Beastie Boys and Run DMC.
Yeah. License to Ill.
License to Ill.
I don't
No
know.
Sleep till Brooklyn.
Raising Hell might have been. I might have bought another Run DMC record before that. Anyway, the point is that was the beginning of me listening to music, and so all the music I listened to was hip hop, and then the kids at my school at the time, everything was real separated. Based on what music you listen to.
Right.
So our table, we all listen to rap. Those dudes, they all listen to rock or metal or whatever.
Right.
We had beef with them. Like, we fucking hated them.
In the school?
They fucking hated us. Yeah, but that's how it was. Like, we were growing up in these, like, I was in, in the San Fernando Valley. So like it's the joke is like that school where Ice Cube goes to in the movie in the Yeah. It was basically so Cube and a couple other people, like, it was known that he in particular went to school in my neighborhood.
San Fernando Valley.
So it was up in the valley where all the white kids. But it actually wasn't all white kids. In the movie, they show all white kids, but in reality, it was there's a lot of Persians, a lot of Jewish kids,
Mexicans.
Well, that's where Q played ball at.
So in high school,
Right.
High school, yeah.
So, okay.
they bust all those kids up because they
Right.
wanted to get them out of the hood to get like better teachers, better education, whatever.
Right.
Because they had more funding up there. And so what happened is they all came to our school and they all got integrated. Well, what happened for us was that he had already graduated at that point.
Cube.
And then, yeah.
I'm about to say you went to high school with Cube?
I did. We didn't.
That's the every kid ever.
But what happened was all those kids were still getting bussed up, and they were bringing their music.
Wow.
So the kids from downtown who listened to Ice-T, who listened to NWA, who listened to all that King T, all that stuff, they came up and they're like, check this out. And that's how I got all the music I grew up listening to is from them.
Wow.
Yo, man, let's make some noise.
Long story short, no sex.
But you asked about the other thing.
Yeah.
That by the time we got, like, since we were the next generation after,
Right.
we were like, people would say, like, we're more about our business. Like, we were trying to be artists, make interesting, creative shit, and handle our business so that it stayed afloat, like, so it didn't fall apart, because those dudes had already come out, been intoxicated and whatever, and their business fell apart because the people they handed it to, like, cheated them.
Okay.
Right?
Right.
Like,
Yeah, they're too fucked up to deal with.
You
the
heard stories of, like,
shit.
their attorney cheated them, their business manager cheated them, whoever the label, whatever. So we didn't want to be victims of that. So we were always like, well, let's be, like, clear-headed and smart, and so we didn't party so much. We took care of our shit.
So how did you guys come up with the name Linkin Park? Was y'all at Linkin Park?
Oh, it was a park in Santa Monica. And Chester, our singer, we were looking for a new name. We were called Zero at the time. It was Xero. That was our name. Band.
That was your name, Zero?
Yeah, Zero.
That could have worked.
And then our name was Hybrid Theory.
And Chester was a part of those early?
So Zero was with a different singer, my good friend Mark. And Mark became a music manager. He now manages a ton of great rock artists. So he ended up doing great. And then we got Chester, and we had changed the name to Hybrid Theory. And then that wasn't going to work for whatever reason. And then we were looking for a new name, and Chester was sleeping in his car. He was out from Arizona. He didn't have a place to stay yet. And for whatever reason, he didn't decide to stay with me. I think I offered it to him, but he didn't do it. And he stayed near Lincoln Park. And he brought it in one day. He was like, what about this name?
Wow.
And we changed the spelling because at the time, a .com was powerful. Like having your own name .com was the thing to do. So we changed the spelling to LINKIN in order to get that .com.